All right, Madam Clerk, would you please read the special meeting notice and follow it with a roll call?
Certainly. Members of the town board, special town board meeting Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021 at 6 p.m. Please be advised that pursuant to section 62 of town law, a special town board meeting will be held via video conferencing on Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021 at 6 p.m. for the purpose of considering the following. Public hearing to accept public comment on the draft plan and recommendations in conformance with New York Executive Order number 203, New York State Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative Draft Plan and Recommendations prepared by the Citizen Law Enforcement Review Committee. Clerk, J. Schneiderman, Supervisor, Town of Southampton, dated February 23rd, 2021. Supervisor Schneiderman,
Present.
Councilwoman Lofstad,
Here.
Councilman Martell,
Here.
Councilman Bouvier,
Here.
Councilman Scavone.
That was a here, right?
Yes, it was.
All right. So welcome to everyone, both all the town board members and those who are watching today's meeting. I'm sorry it has to be on Zoom, but we are still in a pandemic. So this is a very important meeting. It's to solicit public input on the draft recommendations of the Clerk Committee. The Clerk Committee stands for Community Law Enforcement Review Committee. That's our acronym for the committee we put together in response to the governor's call for every municipality in New York State, every jurisdiction that maintains its own police force, to conduct an internal review. But, you know, the truth is this probably started long before that. There's been a rising level of community concern on the public's mind for many years, as far back as I can remember. Questions about the use of force, unnecessary force, excessive force in policing. You know, it certainly caught the public's attention with the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, but you know, we've all heard all the various names, the Breonna Taylors and so many of the other individuals who lives were taken away or were injured seriously by excessive force. And it really led to this this hard look at every police department. So we took the role very seriously. We put together a committee, I think a really terrific committee, to dive into this issue. And I have to say, you know, as a supervisor of the town, you know, I provide a certain level of oversight to the police department. This has been a really healthy process to me. I have learned a lot, things that I had never thought about. Many issues in terms of criminal justice and transparency and police policies and, you know, systemic racism that I, you know, might not have been aware of. So I think this has been really healthy. And, you know, I was asked by the governor to chair this. I'm co-chairing this committee, this clerk committee with Chief Skrnicki. I'm honored to serve by his side as co-chair of this committee. And we have done a lot to try to come up with a solid set of recommendations. We met, I want to say 13 times, or something like that, more than 12 times. And those meetings would sometimes go more than 2 hours. And we held some online surveys. We held Zoom meetings, you know, public hall type of, you know, town meetings. And we have, you know, done our best to try to reach out and listen and put together some solid recommendations, which took the form of the draft plan, which we made available on the website. And I'm sure all the board members have had an opportunity to get it and look at it. And the next step here is really adopting the plan. After we've heard from the public, we might make some changes to it. And then we're supposed to get it to the governor's desk, I believe, end of this month or beginning first day of next month. So we're on a pretty tight time schedule here. But we certainly want to hear what the public has to think. And before we get to the public, let me just mention some of the members of the committee. So myself as town supervisor, and as supervisor, we sort of play a special role, as I mentioned, in terms of oversight of the police department. The police chief, Steven Stranicki, who's, really a lifelong member of law enforcement, having been chief of Nassau County PD, has really been so involved in so many levels of policing. Councilman Scavone is the liaison to the police department and served on the clerk committee. Deputy Supervisor Frank Sapone, Southampton Town Attorney Jim Burke, who's also here on this call. We have Deputy Town Attorney Christine Preston Scalera, who also is a former town board member and has done an extraordinary amount of work in putting this plan together. And we are so thankful to her for that work. Captain Jim Kiernan from the Southampton Town Police Department, Pastor Keith Idovinio, and Pastor Keith is at the Blaze Church out in Flanders Riverside area. Reverend Kimberly Quinn Johnson, who is at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the South Fork in Bridgehampton, but also is the designated representative of the NAACP. Brendan Ahern, Esquire, he is executive management team with Tim Sinney, the district attorney. And we have a number of people from the district attorney's office. He is the deputy division chief of the trial division, so a very important member of the DA staff. Kevin McDonald, who is known to many of us for his environmental advocacy, but he's also a resident of Hampton Bays and chairman of the Hampton Bays CAC and involved in lots of civic groups. Lisa Botino is a community organizer, very involved with many of you may have been aware of the large Black Lives Matter protest in the wake of George Floyd's death that happened in Bridgehampton and Southampton. So Lisa was the lead organizer on those protests. Minerva Perez is the executive director of OLA of Eastern Long Island, an advocacy organization that focuses on immigrant rights and women's rights. Reverend Tisha Dixon Williams, she is the senior pastor of the First Baptist Church in Bridgehampton. Jim Banks, also known sometimes as Dr. Love, he's chairman of our anti-bias task force. He's also the chair of the Suffolk County African American Advisory Board. And he's also on so many other things, very involved. John Lopez, he's our youth advisor. He is currently an undergraduate student at Georgetown University, and we're thrilled to have him. And Father Constantine Lazarakis, very involved in the community. He is a priest over at the Greek Orthodox Church. And Patricia Theodoro, acting deputy division chief for the trial division of the district attorney's office. Patricia Brosco, acting chief of the East End Bureau of the district attorney's office. Brad McGill, acting deputy chief of the East End Bureau. Excuse me, Keela Troge, a lawyer, also a member of the Shinnecock Nation and representing the Shinnecock Nation. Brian Browns, who's the chief legal operating officer for the Legal Aid Society. And Emily Falkowski was also part of the committee, also from Legal Aid Society. So that is our clerk committee, and I thank all the members. I know some of the members are participating tonight. So let me ask first, before we go to the public, has the board all received copies of the draft plan? Okay, okay. So Chief, do you want to say anything before we go to the public? You're still muted.
Okay. Thank you, Supervisor. Yeah, I would echo some of your commentary. I think this was a very beneficial process. Like you, I gained a lot of knowledge, a very good experience. I think from the time you brought me on here, it's been my goal to try and progress this police department to be the best that it can be. And certainly without knowing exactly what the community concerns are, although we try to get that information on a daily basis, this particular endeavor really took as you called it, a very deep dive into some of the most prominent issues of the day. We covered a vast myriad of issues of concern. And I think many of the recommendations from the community are very valuable. We've put many of them into place already and are still working on some. But I don't think there was a single recommendation or a single criticism or concern that wasn't of value. So I very much appreciated the experience. I too would like to thank all the members of the committee for your time and your devotion to making this community as good as it can be. So excellent experience, and I think we have a very good product to submit to the board at this point. You're muted, Supervisor.
So this hearing is for the town board. Obviously, Tommy John Scavone, Councilman Scavone, and I have been involved with the compilation of this plan. So we've sat through those 13 or so various meetings. If there are board members that have particular questions about the plan or its construction, brief questions, we could do that. But I do want to get to the public as quick as possible. But if you feel like you have anything you want to add before we go to the public or questions that you need clarified, you can use this juncture to ask those.
Yeah, I'd like to take a moment just to recognize the members of the committee and the work that they have done on this and their willingness to be open with the police and members of our police chief and your officers and their willingness to be open to work with members of the community in a real productive manner. I also want to give credit to our town employees. Christine, well done. Frank, of course, Jim Burke with everything, and Jay and Chief, you all ran great meetings. It really is an esteemed group and committee that we've worked with, and I'm proud of it. But with that, other questions, just wanted to say that. We also had subcommittees too, Jay. In addition to some of the meetings, we had some breakout committees, and we had a bunch of those as well.
And we also had hundreds of people participate through the surveys too. So I'll take this opportunity to thank all of them too. Anyone who took the time to give us input, we really appreciate it and we are better for it. Okay, so then we'll go to the public. I'm not really going to cut people off. I think if you want to speak for more than 5 minutes, we'll revisit that issue after 5 minutes. The clerk will let me know when 5 minutes are up, and then we can decide how best to proceed. We just want to make sure that everybody has had an opportunity to be heard. I'm going to probably ask the board to leave the written record open tonight for a week after, with the hope that we are able to close the public hearing. And so not everybody could make tonight's Zoom meeting. So we can then get some written comments as well. All right, Charles, do you have, I think Joe Shaw, I had mentioned that he wanted to approach the board. I don't know if he's out there, and anyone else, do you have a list?
Yes, Joe Shaw is here. There's a bunch of people here, so I can call them one by one if you like.
Sure.
James Banks is here. John Lopez is here.
Right, they're both on the committee.
Judith Montalban.
Who's that?
Judith Montalban. Keith. Kevin McDonald. Kimberly Johnson.
Yeah, a lot of them, these are members of the clerk committee.
Kitty Merrill. Lisa
report,
Bertano,
committee member.
and L. Marzan. Those are the people out of here.
Okay, well,
And Connie.
so I know Joe had asked to speak, so maybe we'll take Joe.
Those are-
Maybe we'll take Joe Shaw first, but anyone who wants to be heard who's watching this, please use the raise hand function or send a text, whatever.
Yeah, they can raise their hand. I'll let
Yeah.
them.
Just click the raise hand button and Charles will get to you. So Joe, can we bring Joe in?
Joe is in.
I'm not seeing him yet.
All right, let's try it again. Joe.
Hey, there he is.
There I am.
Aha.
Good evening.
All right, good evening, Joe.
How's everybody tonight?
I think we're okay.
All right, I will be brief because I know you want to move on. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, for letting me approach the committee. I just real briefly wanted to explain. I had reached out to the committee earlier in October by writing, and again this past week, just because I really want to urge the committee to include some language in the draft report that's related to some of the issues that we're working on with Chief Skrzynecki when it comes to public access and the police department. And I want to stress that the chief and I have a really good working relationship, and we've been working on these issues almost since his arrival in, what was it, 2016, Chief, I think. And he and I have a great working relationship. And I think the problems that we're having as far as access goes, I don't want to suggest that they're in any way nefarious or anything like that. I think it's really just a question of logistics, and some of it is just the infrastructure that's in place and trying to get past that. I also think we have some disagreements about policy and what is public record and what isn't. And quite frankly, I think that the department has been correct and we've been wrong in at least one instance when we've disagreed on that. So I'm fully willing to acknowledge that there's some questions that need to be answered. So what we've done, the Express News Group, I'm sorry, I'm the executive editor of the Express News Group. I probably should have introduced myself up front. I apologize. We published the Southampton Press, the Sag Harbor Express, and the East Hampton Press. What did I say? The Sag Harbor Express. Yes, please don't get me fired. I have to get that right. And we have been working on these issues for some time, and just recently started to work with Cornell Law School. They have something called the First Amendment Clinic, and they work with local newspaper organizations on access issues. And I thought it would be helpful to bring some legal opinions to the table when we have these conversations with the chief. But I do want to stress that those are ongoing conversations. The ball's kind of in our court right now, and I really wanted to get the two attorneys that we've asked to join the conversation up to speed before we move forward. So my only concern with the committee is that the draft report really makes no mention of this ongoing conversation. And I'd really like it if the report did. And I believe the chief, I've spoken with the chief and the supervisor, and they seem amenable to adding some language, just to note that those are ongoing conversations that we're having.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Joe. So yeah, I've had some conversations with the chief as well about this, and I think there's some progress we can make in that regard. So
yeah, and I understand the logistics and the resources are all an issue, and we want to make it easy for both sides as well. But we do want to make sure that the report notes those issues so that we can keep them as a priority.
right, and I think at the core of your quest is, the more transparency, the less likelihood that something might go wrong or something might happen within the department that would not pass muster with the public. So
Absolutely. And we also want to work as a partner with the department, being careful how we release information, because we understand that can have an effect on investigations, that can have an effect, we recognize that this is a two-way street. And we do need to work with the department on that. But we do want to address the shortcomings we see in the process as it stands right now.
Right. I know some of the smaller police departments provide more of a daily log of activities. I understand that. And, we're a much larger department and don't have the resources to provide that level of detail on a daily basis. But we're working on how we can get you the information you're looking for.
And I think the chief will back me up that we've offered to work with the department in a pilot program sort of sense to try and work out the media access part of the town's information portal, because apparently there is one, but it's a question of trying to get it to work so that it can help both sides a little better. And we'll be happy to work with the department on that in an active way. So the chief and I are working together on that stuff. I really just wanted to make sure the report noted that that's an ongoing process.
And Supervisor, just so you know, in the board, the chief and I have been working on language to address that clarification in the report for sure.
Excellent.
Wonderful.
All right. Thank you, Joe.
Sure. Thank you for your time. And thanks for the effort you guys went through. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for what you do too as well. Okay. Charles, you want to take the next speaker? I think, Charlie, you're...
Be a committee person, or I have no hands?
Well, you have no hands raised?
I have no hands.
The only person I'm seeing who, well, I can't really see the names, only in the chat, there's a Judith Montalban.
Yeah.
She's not on the committee. Everybody else you mentioned, I thought was a committee person. Well, maybe I can see in the participant list. Hold on.
Yes, you can.
Oh yeah, I can see here.
If anyone wants to speak, they can just raise their hand.
Marzan. I don't believe is on the committee, and Montalban, but they're not required to speak. So
right. Exactly.
One did. Judith Montalban sent a message in the chat.
I can let her in.
Only if she wants to speak.
No hands.
While we wait, any other questions from the town board? Christine, anything else you want to mention?
No, not specifically. I just want to thank everyone that looked, that did some review preliminarily and sent me some typos and stuff. Those corrections are all have been made. And you'll see that in the final document. And there was another clarification, but other than that, no.
Christine, how many recommendations did we end up with in this report? Is there?
I think we ended up with 21. And they can be found in the executive summary in the back. They're highlighted throughout the plan, but just to make it easier, there is that executive summary right in the back.
All right. I'll invite anyone from the clerk committee if you want to say a word or two. Just raise your hand and we'll bring you in.
No hands.
So Christine, just maybe talk us through the next steps here. once we close the hearing and then we leave the record open for, let's say, a week, you'll make the changes to the plan, the ones that Joe Shaw mentioned.
Mhm.
I had some updates on my bio. I wanted to shorten it too, which I think I gave to you.
I did that, yes.
And I don't know if you got any of the missing bios, but any other changes that you're aware of? Yeah, I
No,
know-
they really, some typos,
Typos.
the amendment to the bio, nothing substantive. I was aware of Joe's comments this evening, and I already worked with the chief and we worked on language so and it appear everybody's good with that, so that will appear in the final. And if you leave the written record open for an additional week till the close of business next Tuesday, and we see what we get in terms of those written comments, and to the extent they're not incredibly substantive, I'll just make them to the plan and highlight that to the board before it is adopted. And to the extent it requires further conversation, we can discuss that at that point.
And then we would formally adopt it by resolution on a particular date.
March 23rd meeting will be the meeting that will have this resolution on for adoption of the final plan. And at the close of that meeting, you'll be authorized to sign the certification that this process took place. We will send a copy of the plan with that certification and authorizing resolution to the budget office of the state. And we will do that by April 1st, which is the deadline. And we will have concluded this process.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
Jay, just a quick comment, if I could. I want to say thank you to the whole committee. Christine, great job. In the recommendations that we found, there were some things that we had assumed there would be language barriers and there might be some increases in training and maybe even some increased sensitivity training, but it was so in depth that you got down to the training videos and what needed to be done to reflect our community and odds and ends like that. I think it was a great job. Thank you all.
It was a really good committee. A lot of expertise and a lot, when I first met with the committee, I sort of explained that they were not just there to represent themselves too, that they all had connections to larger groups of people. And, they should reach out to their constituencies to also bring in even a better understanding of how the community perceives our police department and what some of the issues are. And they did that. They all did that. So even though it, maybe whatever 15-member committee, however many, it really represented a much larger sector of the population. All right, anyone else? Thank you, Rick, for that.
Yeah, I did have a comment. I wanted to also point out that the town of Southampton has several committees, the Anti-Bias Task Force and Affirmative Action Task Force, and I'm fortunate to be liaison to both of those. And I wanted to particularly thank Chief Stranicki and Sergeant Miller, who served on the Anti-Bias Task Force, and that these issues have been discussed for a long time in the committees. And I think there was a great sense of appreciation from the members of these committees that these issues were brought forward the way they were. I know they put a lot of input into it. A lot of some members of the Anti-Bias Task Force and Minerva Perez of the Affirmative Action Task Force were parts of your committee. And it's just really good to see this. The next part, I think, is being able to act on these recommendations as we move forward with that. But I particularly wanted to thank you, Chief, for being there from day one when you first came into being Chief of Police for the Southampton Town Police Department. That was your main focus, and I think it's showing. And I think there's deep appreciation of the members. We've come a long way, but we have a long way to go. But it's really good to see this happen, and thank you personally.
Thank you.
I'll remind everyone too that the committee It's predominantly volunteers. There's people who gave their time, 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock at night for twice a month. So it was a lot of time, plus subcommittees, plus research, plus reading. They didn't ask for anything. They did this as a way of helping their community. So we really appreciate that. One of the committee members I see on my screen now, Lisa Botina. So Lisa, thank you for participating in the clerk committee. Your voice was really important as an organizer and somebody who really cares about issues of discrimination and bias and equity, all of those things, criminal justice. So Lisa, did you want to say a few words?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So I just wanted to at least make a comment that I'm really proud of this report. Thank you, Christine, for hanging in there with me. I know I'm not the easiest person to work with at times, but know that I think what made our committee very special was that we were all coming to a place where we care about this community and we want it to see it do the best that it can. So even when we disagreed, we still found ways to find middle ground on that. And I think that very much is reflected in the report. And there's things not in the report that Chief and I are talking about offline that are still being implemented and reforming. And I can't tell you how valuable it is to have a chief that I know I can call and say, hey, I just thought about this. What are your thoughts on it? And have that dialogue back and forth. So instead of it being very adversarial, like, it was very cooperative. And I can tell you that I'm involved in this in several jurisdictions, and our process worked. At the end of the day, we're submitting a plan that I know that I'm really proud of. I would assume many of you are really proud of. And that really, again, like I always say, it's the Hamptons, but I really love my community. And this really shows. The two things that I will add that's not really, one is obviously, like, I'm going to throw it in on the record. I'm still really down for a community oversight or CCRB type thing with the complaint process. And hopefully that's something in the long term we can still work on or consider or add in some elements. The other thing I would hope maybe we would consider is kind of keeping this committee together and meeting not twice a month. I'm happy after April 1st, I get my life back a little bit. But maybe, quarterly or something for the first year just to check in, or twice a year. And I hope that you use all of us as a resource. I think we all came to the table, not only to sit there and like wag our fingers, but also to say like, hey, we're good resources, please use us. So I just want to say thank you to everybody, because it really was it was exactly how government and community and police should all work together. And I hope that maybe some other municipalities check us out, because I think we did a really good job.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa. This is also the second time in a year that you come to this board with those compliments. So I appreciate you speaking up and letting us, giving us that kind of feedback.
We often hear the complaints, and we don't often hear people take the time to say, good job. So that does mean a lot. It really does. We do what we did regardless of whether somebody said thank you, but it's still nice to hear that somebody, particularly somebody who dedicates herself so deeply to these issues of equality and human dignity, will take the time to say, job well done. So thank you for that, Lisa. All right, anyone else? Charles?
Yes.
Okay.
I see all the hands.
It's only 6:38. What do you suggest we do? I mean, I think we could close. This was well advertised, well publicized. People knew about it. And there's been so many opportunities for people to weigh in here. So many, the 2 online surveys, the 2 listening sessions. The record has been open. So it's possible that those who had wanted to make their comments known have already done that. Hold on, I have a reporter texting me. Okay, even the reporter saying that I should wrap it up. Okay, so what I'll do then is I'll make a motion to close the public hearing and leave the written record open for 1 week. That brings us, I think, to March 9th. All right, does somebody want to second that?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Lofstad. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, approved. So the record is left open for a week. The public hearing is closed. Thank you, board. Is there anything else on tonight's agenda? I don't think so. Sunday, this was it, right? You're muted?
No, there's nothing else on the agenda except for you do have a public portion listed. I think you've already covered that area, but that was for the hearing. So if you want to just,
I guess I technically have to open and close public portion.
well, you should call it, I would say.
All right. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in public portion? That would allow you to speak on any issue whatsoever. Charles, do you have any hands?
No hands.
Okay, I'll make a motion to close public portion.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Martell. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, you're welcome. All right, board, is there any other business? All right, hearing none, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Schiavone. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All
Excellent.
right, I will grab the gavel here.